Hello there guys and girls. Welcome to another episode of Game Story Time. Thanks to everyone who commented on the last video for your lovely feedback. For those who don't know, in this series we will talk about our greatest memories connected to video games and anything gaming related. I would like to remind you to share your stories in the comment section and maybe I will comment on your story in the following episode. It doesn't need to be retro at all. Just tell me what gaming related moment touched you or you remember very vividly. That's one way I want you to get to know me a little better, and of course I want to get to know you. This time the Nerfed Gamer sent in a short story which I'm gonna read out. This was all around 1995. I bought Transport Tycoon Deluxe, installed it and played it. My first PC had an Intel 486, 25MHz processor and 4MB RAM with DOS 6.22 and Windows 3.1. No internet access. Things got so heavy the game was actually slowing down the more I threw into it. Minimum recommended processor speed was 33 MHz. When I looked up at the clock, I had played the game for 12 hours straight. No breaks of any kind. Talk about addictive. Love that game style even today. Especially the part where you described how the game would slow down the more objects you put into your map clicked with me. While I didn't have my own PC as a kid, I had friends who did and we played similar games, especially SimCity. We had the same effect and at some point just had to start building a new city because the frames would drop lower than your twerking mom. However, I don't really play these types of games nowadays. Also, I gotta admit that I've never managed to find enough time to do a 12-hour gaming session ever in my life. But during my BF4 times 6 to 8 hours a night were pretty common for me. Let's move on. My fourth story is about how much of a sound effects nerd I am. Now you might ask yourself how that relates to video games. Well, for one, I like to produce machinima from GTA 5, in which I oftentimes use hundreds of different sound effects each. Some of them I even record myself to make them suit the scene perfectly. Over time I developed a real affinity for sound design and sound effects. And here's the deal, there are some sound effects floating around that I've known since the 90s from different video games, and to this day I hear them in contemporary movies or series. Here are a few examples. The first couple of samples are from Turok 2, which I played on my Nintendo 64. Yeah, I grew up with this console, and if you've watched this series from the start, you know I love my N64. In Turok 2 there were these tiny pesky dinosaurs that kinda resemble the ones from Jurassic Park 2. Let's have a listen to the sounds they make. Some of these samples show up typically in science fiction productions from time to time. Maybe you have noticed these samples as well. Another game on N64, which in my opinion is totally underrated, is called Jet Force Gemini. This was another sci-fi kind of game which I love to play, and maybe even back then my fetish for sound effects started. Let me show you a few samples from the game that you might have heard elsewhere too. Now what's the point of this nerdy crap, you might ask yourselves? Well, anytime I hear one of those samples in a movie, I just get the nostalgic urge to play the game it is from again. Also, most of the time I'm just bursting out, telling everyone in the room where this sample is from, and people look at me like, what the fuck dude, who cares? Or something like that. But if you think about it, the mainstream version of the sound effect Easter egg hunt is the Wilhelm scream. Nowadays this sample is used in almost every movie because it's become some sort of a tradition. That very scream was part of a commercial sound library. The first time I had the realization that certain samples are used on multiple media like music, movies and games was when I listened to Slayer's song Deviants from the record God Hates Us All. I must have been around 13 at the time, and there's this sample of a screaming woman right at the start. This one gave me absolute nightmares because that song is just so heavy. Years later I started hearing the same sample in some series and films and had this instant shiver running down my back again. And that's exactly why I love sound design. It's a hugely important part of any good game, movie or series. So yeah, that was another game story. Let me know what you think of the series and don't forget to share your own priceless experiences with gaming. Thank you for watching. Renova, over.